Welcome to the Leading Visionaries podcast, featuring stellar conversations with emerging and established leading visionaries. Thanks for joining us today as we celebrate and spotlight the leading visionaries who are thinking differently, seeing new possibilities, have the courage to dream big, take inspired action, and create conscious change all around the world. Now, here's your host, Angel B. Hartwell.
Welcome to another episode of the Leading Visionaries podcast, where we celebrate the ingenious, insightful, innovative, and inspired leading visionaries of our time and provide our listeners with world-class examples of the kind of courage, clarity, and confidence it takes to bring visions into reality. This is your host, Angel B. Hartwell, and today we welcome a very special guest. Have you ever thought your digital marketing might actually be hurting your business? That you are not breaking through the noise, you are just adding to it? Perhaps you are not one funnel away. Maybe that funnel is stopping the big fish that you want. Our guest today has a refreshingly new view, and his name is Tom Schwab. Tom asks you to consider that you are just one conversation away. That's his experience and that data working with over 1,500 leading brands as the Chief Evangelist Officer at Interview Valet. If you want a rich life and a profitable business, Tom believes you are just one conversation away. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Angel, I'm thrilled to be here. And I think of the conversations that we've had over the years and meeting in real life, and thrilled to talk with you here and share it with the world.
Oh, well, I really appreciate so much about you, Tom. You are somebody who was a leading visionary at the beginning of when podcasting really started to pop and saw opportunity. And so I would love to have you talk today, have the conversation with our leading visionaries today about what it was like for you when you got the vision for Interview Valet.
I wish I could say it was evolutionary, but it was really just revolutionary. And it was one of those things where I just thought, I wonder if this will work. Right. And the thing that I noticed is that my last business I had built up with guest blogging, right? Tapping into other people's established audience, right? And blogs worked great 20 years ago. And all of a sudden I was between periods. I was in what I call just sort of a rest period. And I was in a mastermind and people said, well, how did you grow your business? And I'm like, guest blogs, but they don't work anymore. And so I started to think, I wonder if you could use podcasts almost like we used to guest blogs 20 years ago to get that know, like, and trust, to have that conversation with your ideal customers. So we started to test it. Angel, it worked great. And at first I thought, okay, I'll tell everybody how to do this. So I did a little PDF, gave it away to everybody. And someone said, can you teach me how to do this? So I did a little course and I never took it out of beta. We were in beta for 4 months and every few weeks I would add things to it and get it better. And finally people just said, I just want to be the guest. Can't you do all the rest? And I'm like, oh, that's good copy, right? And I'm like, well, let's give it a try. So we beta tested it for 4 months. And at the end of that, one of our clients actually gave me the name Interview Valet. He bought the domain for me. And he said, please, you need to launch this. Now, fast forward 9 years later, we've got a team of 30 in Europe and North America. We serve about 150 clients, select clients at any one time. And as podcasting has taken off, our business has grown also.
Beautiful. Well, so it sounds to me, Tom, like, because you said this came to you during a fallow period, right?
Yes.
It sounds to me like you're a serial visionary. So what I would love to have you share with our listeners who are, probably also serial visionaries is your journey as a visionary. Like, do you recall the first time you had a vision and brought it into reality? And, what do you see within you and also within the leading visionaries that you represent? Because all the clients that you represent now are certainly leading visionaries as well. What were the things that you are aware of that you needed to do or be in order to bring your very first, maybe share with us your very first vision of your very first business?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back even from the previous business to when I was selling, right? And I can still remember one of my best clients told my boss, he said, I didn't know if Tom was the stupidest person alive or the most dedicated and, stick to it. But he said, either way, he got my business. And, at the time, I'm like, I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an insult. But as I look back on the businesses that I've had, I've started it, and there's been a lot of other people that would say, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that, right? And they do it for a little bit, and then it either gets tough or they see a next shiny object, and I stick to it, right? And so my previous business, before this, I had just done it for some friends, orthopedic surgeons, and I was helping them out with durable medical equipment rental, right? Because their patients couldn't find it. And it was my clients that started telling other clients, hey, work with Tom. He'll take care of you, right? And so we built that up from a regional player to a national leader using inbound marketing and guest blogging. So when I started this, I really think that it was sticking to it, right? The fun part is always the beginning when you've got that idea and everything looks like possibilities. And then you get to the point where it's like everything looks like problems, right? And I remember a client telling me years and years ago, he said, on the other side of the problems is the profits, right? Because everybody stops at the problems. And if you can solve that problem, then you can help people and get the profits. And so throughout this business, there's been different times where you just sort of run into a roadblock, right? Of, oh, how do we all communicate when there's more than just a couple of people? Well, that stops most people and they go on to something else. And we're like, well, this was before remote work was a big thing. How can we use these tools? How can we get to a certain point where we're not all stepping on each other's toes? That was another thing to change the entire structure of it. How can we use data now that we have that? And so there's all of these things that it's almost like you build the business and then you grow into that next ceiling or that next big problem. And you can either stop there and never grow. You can give up to look at the next shiny object, or I don't know if I'm stubborn or stupid, but I'm like, oh, we can figure this out and break into it. And it's always that fun part because you break out of it and you're like, there's nothing but blue skies ahead of me. But I know in my heart that there's probably 12 months from now, it's not a blue sky, it's a blue ceiling, and we're going to hit ourselves up to it. It's going to be painful, but we'll figure out a way to break through that.
I love it. So for our listeners, here's the things that I heard there: persistent, consistent, and you have a power question. How can we? What a great question that is. I think that for many, I agree with you, many leading visionaries, they have the possibility in front of them. And it's like, oh my God, I have to do this. And you just go all in. And then you hit that wall where you run into the problems. And then, hopefully on the other side, you get profits. What happens though, Tom? Like, how did you end up in a fallow period? Like, what happens when the ceiling is the indicator that it's complete for you? Do you have a sense of that as well? Because I think there are also phases that we go through where we're finished. We're finished with one thing. Like you were on my first podcast. You were on the Men on Purpose podcast. And it was, you and I met at an event called the New Media Summit many years ago, 5 years ago. We were talking about this in the green room. And I launched my second podcast, Wickedly Smart Women, and was doing 2 for about 3 months. And then I just knew I was complete with Men on Purpose and ended up selling it. I was like one of the first people to ever sell a podcast. So how do you know when it's time to grow through the ceiling or when it's time to go?
Oh, that is a great question. And if I knew that or had a way to know that, it's a gut feeling over time, and listen to people speaking to you, right? So that last fallow period was after I had sold the previous company, right?
So you sold, right?
I sold, we built it up. I got the offer to sell it. It seemed like the time was right. We were just entering a new phase in our life, and I'm like, yeah, I've done what I wanted here. And I was also not as excited about the business, right? It had gotten to be where it was a business that structurally I had put things into it where I didn't like it anymore, right? We were brick and mortar. I didn't like going into the office. I wanted to travel. Well, I couldn't travel and work at the same time. So I thought, well, I'll end this. And if I ever start something up again, then I'll make it the way I want.
Yeah.
So I took that fallow period, sort of that sabbatical, and I had lots of ideas, right? I get lots of ideas in the shower. I mean, I should be able to write off water and hot water as a business expense, right?
Go right for it. There. Go for it, Tom.
I think every visionary or entrepreneur should be able to do that. But I had ideas, but it was the ones that people kept asking about. And at times I was like pushing back. It's like, no, an agency, a service-based business, that is tough, right? I've seen those before. I'm not sure that I want to do that. And it was people asking, right? And people giving me feedback, right? I wanted to take the easy way out, right? I'll do a cheesy little PDF. I'll give it away because selling a book, that's too tough. I didn't do that till years later. And then I was like, well, I don't want to do this for people. I'll just teach you how to do it. And listening to people when they come back to you and give you feedback. And sometimes that feedback is like a 2x4 over your head. And I can still remember a friend, an early client that gave me my words back to me. One of my common phrases or Tomisms that you'll hear me say is that we're all selling preparation H, right? No one cares about your product or your service. They just care about their pain in the rear end, right? So as I'm doing this course, one of the people that is taking the course that knows me, that I respect, he goes, Tom, you know how you say we're all selling preparation H? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're trying to teach me how to be a proctologist. I don't want to do this, right? I want you to do it. I just want to be the guest. And I'm like, that's pretty clear. Or when a client comes and says, this is what you should name the company. And I just bought you the domain, right?
I don't think it gets clearer than that, Tom.
I was going to say in the Navy, we used to say, you have to be smart enough to know right answer when told. So I think people, the universe, whatever, keeps telling us, and we got to be smart enough to listen.
I love it. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Listeners, are you a leading visionary or in the role of leading other visionaries? Consider joining our community and sharing your feedback and takeaways from each episode. We invite you to join us and support this podcast by making a donation at leadingvisionariespodcast.com. Interested in finding out more about how you can receive support for getting your vision out of the air and onto the ground? You can apply to qualify for a complimentary consultation with me or a member of my team by clicking the Connect with Angel button on the website. Be sure to share this show and your own spirals of influence with the people who you think might benefit from our content. I want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners who are downloading, rating, and reviewing. We're welcoming thousands and thousands of downloads from all over the world, and want to shout out this week to our listeners in, I think, Tom, you're in Michigan?
I am.
In Michigan. And we will be right back with Tom Schwab.
The Leading Visionaries podcast is brought to you by the Creative Age Consulting Group. Are you the one who thinks differently, who is called to create a significant conscious change in the world? who is seeing and dreaming of a better way for your industry, your community, humanity? Creative Age Consulting Group is hired to guide leading visionaries just like you who want to break through the static in order to clearly express and confidently enroll support for their vision in a way that makes it inevitable that it will come to pass. Your word is your wand, and as the leader, your ability to articulate and communicate your vision is essential to its materialization and monetization. Please enjoy with our compliments a free copy of the book, Be Heard by Millions and Live Your Destiny, which was a #1 new release in 3 categories to get you started. The book is yours by visiting gift.leadingvisionariespodcast.com.
And we are back with Tom Schwab. You can actually find out more about Tom if you're a leading visionary yourself and you know that you need to be the voice of your brand. You need to be getting interviews. And Tom, that's the work that he does with his company at Interview Valet. So you can go to interviewvalet.com/LV for leading visionaries, and we will have that link for you in the show notes. So Tom, before we went to the break, we were talking about both this idea of how do you know when to go and how do you know when to grow? And some of the things that you were talking about were you got a gut feeling over time, you weren't as excited, but you also sold your company and the offer was incoming. So one of the things that you have always, it seems, been able to do is have incoming. Like somebody came in and gave you interviewvalet.com. Somebody came in and gave you the offer for your first business or the previous business to this. I would love to hear how this idea of being one conversation away has allowed you to be somebody who is so receptive and magnetic to the incoming.
That's a great observation, because if you put it out into the world will come back to you, right? And sometimes we hold things so tightly, and this could be money or ideas. I can't tell anyone what my new idea is because they might steal it, right? How ridiculous is that, right? Everybody has the same idea. And I remember Dharmesh Shah, who started HubSpot. He said, if you have a new idea, you should tell the whole world about it, right? Because if somebody's going to steal it, you'd rather they steal it early as opposed to you put all your time and effort into it. And the thing is that most people have their own ideas, right? They're trying to execute on their stuff. They're not trying to steal from you. What happens is when I would put out what I was doing, I'd get feedback. Do people like it? Don't they like it? Some people would want to come alongside and help. There'd be other ones that would give feedback. And so I talk through things in order to process it. And, I think that helps me because not only do I process it, but other people help me process it. So I think it might be even a scarcity mentality or an abundance mentality. Right? If I can put it out there and share it with people, maybe they'll get something out of it. And I know that I will get something out of it. And to me, it's more fun there too, right? I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, right? I actually live in a suburb of Kalamazoo, Michigan, right? So I'd like to talk with people, share with them. What are you doing? How can I help? This is what I'm doing. And I think it's a lot more fun, right? And sometimes, I'll be honest, right? I put my head down at a problem, right? Here's a problem. And I just need to put my head down, go into the computer, start working, right? And I can grind my way out of this, right? I can work my way out of this. It's never fun. And it never really works that well, right? Because I've got a team now of 30, right? And there's always somebody there. I can help with that. They've got different ideas, or going to, mastermind groups, forums, communities, and putting it out there. There is nothing that I have been through that somebody else hasn't been through already. And, my big problem, somebody else has already done that, right? And it's in the rearview mirror. And I say, how will I ever get through 4th grade math? Well, there's somebody in 6th grade goes, here's how you do it, right? And it's like, that's genius. And so it's the same way of asking and then also being there to help. So when somebody is, if I'm 1 or 2 steps ahead of them and they ask, well, I'm blessed to be a blessing, right? Somebody helped me. I'm more than happy to help somebody else.
Oh, I love that. I'm blessed to be a blessing. We have sparkling insights that we pull for our graphics for this show. And I think that's the sparkling insight. I'll let my team, I love my team. My team always finds the best sparkling insight, but that one feels pretty sparkly to me, Tom. So we have a couple more minutes to go here. I think the thing I want to go with next is I'd love to have you talk about your vision right now for the industry in general, like the thought leader, the leading visionary who does need to get their voice out, who does want to have conversations, who does want to get more reach and more awareness and wants to be able to start to enroll people in their vision. One of the things that was brought up in the introduction was this whole idea about breaking through the noise. So I'd love to hear your vision kind of for the overall industry around what you see is happening now and what you see is coming.
I'm going to take a step back and just say, not the industry, but in the world of humans and search engines, right? Because ChatGPT and AI has come out here in the last 6 months. And there's thing now where I think everybody's looking and saying, is this real? We recently hired, and there was some resumes that came in, and they were perfect, right? They had semicolons and everything. My team threw them out because they're like, no, this is just ChatGPT, the way they answered these questions. Not only are humans doing that, but the search engines are too, right? Dennis Wu, who's a big SEO guy, he was talking the other day that said, the search engines right now are looking at all of us as liars, thieves, and bots, right? They think all of the stuff we've ever putting out there on the computer now is AI. And how else could they, right? There's so much stuff coming in. And so they're looking for clues to prove that you're human, right? And I think people that are looking to hire a business, right, to work with somebody, they want clues that you're human. Right? So how do you give them those clues? Well, you do content that's collaborative, right? You do stuff that maybe isn't scalable, but it's effective. One of our clients, Gail Bird Moody, past client, she's now the CMO for LinkedIn Navigator, Sales Navigator. And I love how she says, we're all getting better at doing things that are more efficient and less effective, right? Angel, in the time that we've been talking here, you and I both could have sent out 100,000 emails, right? Blind, cold emails, very efficient, but not effective. Whereas people will say, well, how can I reach more people, right? Well, how can you do it at scale, but also make sure that it's efficient and effective? And so I think we need to be human. We need to have these conversations. And that's why I say, we're one conversation away, not one funnel, right? The best things in my life have come through a conversation, right?
Not a funnel, right?
Yeah, my bride did not come through a funnel. I did not take 7 billion people and find the right one, right? No, she was introduced to me by a dear, dear friend. And, so I just look at that. How can I be human? Because I think that's what the search engines and people are looking for.
I love that. Well, and one of the things that I've noticed in the last, because you and I have been intersected since 2017, and in this last period of time, this last 5 or 6 years, there has been not only like now the AI and the ChatGPT crap, but there's also been this trajectory of let's get hundreds of thousands of likes. And hundreds of thousands of likes. One of the things I pride myself on my podcast is it's always been organic. The number of downloads I have has been organic. The reach I've created has been organic. My first show, Men on Purpose, that was all organic. Wickedly Smart Women. We're in 108 countries, 9-time award winning. That was all organic. And this show will also be organic. And this idea of creating a big, fat, non-buying list makes no sense to me at all. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? So I really appreciate that. And I think that this idea of one conversation away is part of that organicness. It's the naturalness that both the search engines and people are looking for. So I love what you just said. And the last couple of minutes, Tom, if there's something you would like to celebrate, something you would like to share with other leading visionaries, some word of encouragement or inspiration, or some other last little piece about what you've got going on over at Interview Valet, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to go back to something that'll probably be chiseled on my tombstone because I say it so often. What's ordinary to you is amazing to others, right? What you know about your business, about your industry, that could help so many people. So many people are amazed by that. And going back to that, blessed to be a blessing, right? You've learned that it does no good if you don't share that with somebody, right? And right now, there is somebody on their knees praying for the product or service that you offer. I don't care if you're in version 1.0, that's perfect for someone, right? So you need to get out there. I shouldn't say you, if I was that person on my knees, I would hope that you'd get out there and put it out there, because we don't buy the best. We buy the best we know of. And that's why I think obscurity is everyone's biggest problem. And if I can help you in any way to leverage podcast interviews, if you go back to that interviewvalet.com/LV, there's an assessment. Will podcast interview marketing work for me? I'll give you a copy of my book. You can buy it on Amazon, or I'll just send you a copy. And then all my social media and calendar scheduling is there too. So if I can be of any service to you, please just reach out.
You are so phenomenal. I am so grateful that you've been with me today, Tom, and it's such a pleasure to reconnect in this way and have this one conversation, and we'll see where this goes for both of us and for our listeners and other leading visionaries who are tuning in. So, listeners, we do love feedback. Please let us know what you thought of today's show by joining our community, sharing your takeaways, asking questions, or submitting guest suggestions. You can weave your visionary thread into our fabric by opting in on our website at leadingvisionariespodcast.com or by interacting with us on social. Look for the handle at Leading Visionaries Podcast on all the major platforms. Thanks for tuning in. Keep your eyes, ears, and hearts open. And remember, you are here to create conscious change.
Thanks for tuning in, downloading, and listening. Be sure to rate and review Leading Visionaries on Apple Podcasts and share with other people you know who can benefit from today's episode. Leading Visionaries is the premier podcast series for informing, activating, and inspiring the leading visionaries who are called to create conscious change and know that now is the best time to welcome wealth and cultivate a web of collaborative support to bring their vision to life. We invite your feedback and guest suggestions and invite you to subscribe to our mailing list to be notified of new episodes at leadingvisionariespodcast.com.